Hello, Reid Blackman.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm glad we speak today.
Me too.
Reid, you have degrees in philosophy from Cornell University, Northwestern University, and the University of Texas in Austin, and you recently left academia to create Virtue, an ethics consultancy. Now, let's talk about ethics and artificial intelligence, two of the most important ethical questions related to artificial intelligence are bias and employment. First of all, tell me about bias. Is artificial intelligence fair?
Yeah, so look, it's not that artificial intelligence is fair or unfair. It's a question of how you build the AI product. So, there's ways of building bias into an algorithm without realizing it. So, there's an egregious way of saying something like, you write code that says, look, if it's a woman, then don't offer them the job or don't move their resume down the line. That would be an egregious, explicit kind of bias. But there's ways of building bias in other ways unintentionally. So my favorite example here is to take a non-AI example because it's so easy. So I like, the example of the racist soap dispenser. So there's a soap dispenser. A lot of people have heard about this that doesn't dispense soap to Black people, at least when it was created. And the question is, well, why? What's going on here? It's exhibiting discriminatory behavior. It's dispensing soap to white people, but not to Black people. Why is that? The explanation was simply that the engineers who developed the dispenser, who trained the sensors how to detect when a hand is present, were all white. And so they trained it on white hands. And so it only learned how to read white hands. And so when someone with a Black hand tried to use it, it wouldn't dispense. Right? So that's a case in which you've got some training data and it's biased, but not because of any intentions of discrimination by the creators. And you can do that in other sorts of ways with AI. It's just analogous where you give it some data that turns out to be discriminatory, though you didn't intend for it to be, and then you wind up with a discriminatory AI product. So again, it's not the AI product itself. It's not AI that's fair or unfair. It's whether the product has been developed in a way that mitigates or hopefully eliminates biases.
Couldn't agree more with you. That's great. And now let's talk about employment. Will AI, same type of question, get rid of jobs?
I mean, look, there's no question whether it will get rid of jobs. I think the empirical question is, will it generate as much or more jobs as it gets rid of, right? So you might think it's going to get rid of these jobs that are, dumb, dangerous, and dirty are the those 3 Ds are the ones that AI is often meant to solve. And so, yeah, it's going to get rid of those jobs. And then it might create jobs down the line, but those are going to require arguably more skill or education or knowledge. So one question, which is an empirical question, which I don't believe anyone has the answer to, is will it create more jobs than it destroys? But then assuming that it does create more jobs than it destroys, or at least that it does create jobs, then the question is who's going to be responsible for training people who would go into those, if you like, lower level jobs, and now have the experience or the knowledge or the skills to enter those jobs in which they work alongside AI or something along those lines. Yeah. And then it's not clear, especially when you're talking about older workers. Younger workers, you might think that we'll get a way of solving the problem through the educational system as children are growing up. But there's going to be a really tough problem when we have a transition period, and the people who are already outside of the educational system because they're in their mid-20s or something, and now they're displaced. How do we train them, and who's responsible for that? In all likelihood, the businesses are not going to take responsibility for it. So my best guess is that governments will have to take responsibility for it, and then whether that actually happens will vary on government. The U.S. is probably far less likely to help out than, say, a European country is.
That's right. That's right. And that's a huge conversation. We'll continue on that in our next video. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Thanks.